Hello, hello, and welcome to a walkthrough of the first year student Common App. My name is Annie B. Harry, and I am the Director of Student Success here at Service to School. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to learn a little bit more about the Common Application. So very quickly, this webinar is going to be about 20 or 30 minutes, and then there will be time for questions at the end. And I would encourage any of you to ask those questions as we go through. That way we can address the questions just given the size of our group. If you're having any technical difficulties, I'd recommend restarting your computer or the browser or doing both. And that should probably help with any issues you're having. All right, so let's get started. So as I said, my name is Annie, and I'm the Director of Student Success here at Service to School. I've been working in higher education for the last 8 years. I did my undergraduate work at Boston University and then my graduate work at Harvard, where I earned a degree in higher education. Since then, I've worked in admissions, first at Lafayette, which is a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, and then at Johns Hopkins in Maryland. And I've done some reading for Georgia Institute of Technology. Again, all of that in the context of admissions. So I understand what colleges are looking for, and I hope to share that information with you. And one thing that I did at all of these schools, like I said, was read application files and recruit students. So I have some insight into what colleges are looking for, especially when it comes to the Common Application. And it's really not designed for non-traditional students, as you're probably finding as you're filling it out. But that's what we're here to talk about, ways that you can kind of fill out the application and what colleges are looking for when it comes to that. So here's the agenda, some of the things that we'll talk about, what an application is and what are the different kinds. We'll go over the Common Application in detail, where you can find answers to questions, and then finally a couple of tips. The first kind of, again, very basic idea here is what an application is. And obviously it is the first step of going to college, is to apply to college. We're reviewing just one application tonight, that is the Common Application. But there are a lot of different applications that you're probably going to encounter. So the Common App is by far the one that's most popular. It's most used by colleges, but you might also encounter the Coalition application, the University of California application, which is used by obviously the University of California system. Applied Texas, which is what the Texas public universities use. So the University of Texas campuses, they all use the Applied Texas application. And then some schools also have their own school-specific applications. So, for example, the University of Alabama has its own application. MIT has its own application. So what you use will depend on where you're applying and what those schools accept. But an example of where you would use a couple of these is if you're applying to schools in California or the UC schools, you'll obviously need the UC application. And let's say you're also applying to MIT, then you'll need the MIT application. So there is a world where you don't use the Common App, but the Common App truly is the most popular one and the one that you're going to see the most. And so that's why we're starting with this one. It's just so popular and kind of foundational. So let's pop over to the Common App to take a look at what it requires. So I've skipped a step here, which is obviously logging into the application, but it's fairly straightforward at Common App. And again, this is the first year student application. So when we say Common App, what we really mean is this tab here. This is the actual Common App. And then you have to fill out these sections. So again, very briefly, your first name, you can use a different name or a nickname, but just know that that might be a field that colleges use when they give you an acceptance letter, for example. So it should still be a name that you're comfortable being called and a name that you're comfortable other people seeing you as, because some colleges will use this different first name as like the way they address you. So Nicholas, for example, can be Nick, no problem. But I've seen some strange names that I think people didn't realize that they might actually use this different first name to address you. Middle name, last name, suffix, any materials under a formal legal name, that's also fairly straightforward. You're going to learn a lot about me because I filled this out, but I was not born in 2005. So your date of birth here, again, fairly straightforward. The address, so you input your permanent home address, and then also an alternate address if you get mail somewhere else, or again, like it says, if you attend boarding school, or if you're in a temporary living situation and there is a more permanent place where you get or receive mail, that's also totally fine. Contact details, your phone number, and then any other phone numbers. Demographics here, you have a lot of different options. So gender and then legal sex, those are all things that you have the ability to choose other options for. Your pronouns as well. And here is where you identify yourself as a veteran or as someone who's currently serving. So here I've put previously served, and then I put a veteran status, and then what branch, and when you started, and when you ended. And then you can also include a little bit more if you've had another military experience. So that's kind of the veteran part of this first year student application. And then some ethnicity questions, and then some demographic questions. This information, as you probably know, is no longer being considered as a part of an admissions process due to the recent lawsuits against some schools. So you can fill it out. You don't have to fill it out. It's totally optional, but again, it's not to be used against you, or it will not be used in the ultimate decision of whether you're admitted or not. So again, it's your comfort level whether you want to share that information. Languages, and then your language, and then your proficiency. This is where you were born, how long you've lived there. So if you're like me and you're over 20 years, right, you'll choose that you've lived in a place for more than 20 years. And then your social security number if you are applying for the FAFSA. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. We highly encourage and recommend that you complete the FAFSA, even if you're not expecting financial aid, because a lot of colleges will use the FAFSA to help them determine whether you're eligible for grants or scholarships. So even though you might not be getting like, you might not be expecting to get a full ride or anything like that, or you don't think that you'll get any federal aid, or you don't want any student loans, no matter what, the FAFSA is still sort of the way that the colleges pull financial information. And so you will need your social security number in order to complete that. And again, we recommend that you do. So that's all, what we've gone through so far. And then here's the Common App fee waiver. So as veterans, for the most part, or as people who are transitioning out of the military, most schools will offer you a fee waiver. Here's the frustrating part. Fee waivers are determined by the college itself. So if you're applying to 5 schools, they might have 5 different processes for fee waivers. So even though Common App is offering a fee waiver, according to who is eligible for one, veterans, service members, they don't fall under that category. So if you fall under any one of these, you're welcome to say that, yes, you meet the eligibility criteria according to Common App. But if you don't meet any of these Common App criteria, we do recommend that you reach out directly to the college. You can do a simple Google search of the college name and then fee waiver, application fee waiver. Usually there is a little bit of sometimes you have to fill out a form, sometimes you have to email the college. For the most part, though, we find that veterans do not have to pay fees, but it does take a little bit of work to do that, which is frustrating, I know. I don't have any experience with UStrive, so whether you want to complete that, sign up to be a part of U-Strive is up to you. And again, this is all geared towards a high school student. So what will they offer you as a non-traditional student? I'm not sure. So I selected no. And that completes sort of the profile, the basic demographic information of the Common App. And then here again, it seems unusual for a non-traditional student, but they will ask questions about your family, including parents and siblings. This is just context for high school students. What jobs parents are in, their level of education, whether there's a sibling who's in college already. But again, not entirely relevant for you, still required. So I filled out kind of the bare minimum here. So the things that are in asterisk, that's what I completed. And here, because I don't live with either of my parents, I selected other and then I wrote independent. I think that covers it. I live independently. And then I do have a child, so that's what I put there. Regarding parent one, I put again the necessary or the required information. So first name, last name, and then I didn't give any other details because I didn't feel that was relevant. This is a question that they ask, and so that's what I completed. Same thing for my father. You're welcome to give them more information. This is really just to help provide that context for your application. But I think the further out you are from high school, the less it matters, you know, how many siblings you have or where they went to college or if they went to college. Same thing for your parents. So it's up to you whether you give them more information, but it's all required. So, and then here we have the education section. Um, I added my high school, and as you can see, I started in 2003, not a boarding school, and I did graduate. And then I graduated in 2007. This question is whether you had a change in progression, meaning did you switch high schools? Did you take a gap year? Did you graduate early or late? So if you had any sort of interruption in high school, this is where you would put that. And then it will ask you to kind of explain. And it's totally normal if you did have a change in progression. So if you switched schools or if you took a year off, that's all fine. You just have to tell them that that's what you did. Other secondary schools. So again, if you switch high schools, this is where you would input that second school information, the school, um, when you started, when you left, and then why you left. So if you had to move or whatever the case may be, that's where you would put that. Colleges and universities. So this is it's meant for like when a high school student takes classes, like a dual enrollment or something like that. So that's what I put here. Let's say that I took some classes at um, a college. I put the college name. And then I put dual enrollment, but you could put, for example, credit awarded directly by college if you were taking classes there, for example, when you started, when you finished. And you can also put if you've earned that degree. So, for example, you might have completed an associate somewhere. You can put that information here. Here's where you would need for your high school transcript. So the graduating class size, any ranking information that is on your transcript, your GPA scale, your GPA, and then the weighting of that GPA. So all of this information um, is not all of it, but like your GPA is required. And I find putting the scale is helpful to give the context, right? So if you got a 3 out of an 8, that's not as good as a 3 out of 4, right? Um, and you will need your high school transcript for that. Uh, this is where you have to list the classes that you took your last year of high school, or your most recent academic year. And so I've listed them here, what I took when I was in high school. Any honors? So these honors are academic achievements. So if you're thinking about achievements or things you've earned or won since that aren't academic in nature. So, for example, like scholar athlete types of things that are a little bit more athletic based. It's up to you. I would include them because I think sometimes those awards or distinctions can get lost, but this is really meant for academic achievements. If you did take classes at a community college or something like that, and you did end up on the honor roll or something, I would put that information here, and I would also say honor roll from Mesa College or something. We're trying to kind of jerry rig this to work for the non-traditional student who might have more um, relevant information that's not pertaining to high school. And so that's how I would approach like any awards you've gotten since or kind of in the post high school realm. And that's where you can also write postgraduate, right? So if you got that honor roll when you were in community college, you can do postgrad, which is just post high school level. And then the level of recognition that was. I would say if you do have like a ton of awards or maybe even things that are military related, include them here. It doesn't hurt. And again, I'm just kind of afraid that that information will get lost if you don't put it somewhere. And there are 5 slots for that, so you have some space. CBOs are organizations that generally help you with applying to college. So service to school is a CBO. I would love if you could select, the number of CBOs you worked with and include service to school. And then I put um, my information, for example. So every one of us at service to school, we do work with applicants and we are advisors to applicants. So if you know your advisor's name, include that information here. It is totally fine. And I think it helps Common App recognize that there are so many applicants who are working with us. So that information definitely helps. Oh, and I also want to mention that for community-based organizations, sorry, Um, if you worked with other ones, you should also include them. So for example, Warrior Scholar Project is here. So certainly take a look to make sure that you've covered any organizations that you work with, because I think the being selected here kind of lends our organizations a little bit more legitimacy. Um, So that would be great. And then after that, you have questions about your future plans. All of you should be selecting that you're applying as a first year student and planning to start college in 23 or 24. Number one, this is the first year student application. So you should be applying as a first year student if you're using this application. And then applications are only open right now for 2024. So if you're planning to start college in 25 or later, this application it's not the right time. Unless you know exactly that there's a program that's admitting for 2025. We don't know. I don't know of any programs that are doing that. So keep that in mind, that this is what you should be selecting. And then whether you want a master's or what your career interest is. No one is going to hold you to this. They're not going to look at you and think like, oh, this person's going to be is not, we have to make sure that he majors in engineering. They're not going to do that. But it does help them again sort of get a broad picture of what are people interested in doing, to what level are they interested in pursuing those postgraduate studies. So it's just really more demographic information. So that's the education section. And then testing, here's where testing can get a little funny. Um, on the Common Application, you can self-report scores, meaning that you can put in if you want your scores if you want to self-report, if you want to include testing scores on your Common Application. As you know, most schools are test optional right now, for 2024 at least. Some of them have adopted that policy for the foreseeable future. Some of them will renew that policy in 2025, maybe, or maybe they'll go back to requiring testing. But right now, most schools are test optional. So if you're self-reporting scores, please know that you're sharing that information with them. If you do not want to let anyone know what you got on the ACT or the SAT or whatever, you'd want to hit no and just bypass this section. So if you're hitting yes, you want the schools to see your scores. You can select which scores you want to share. Probably the ones that are most relevant are the ACT and the SAT. This is for international applications. We probably don't have to worry about that. So then here's a section about the SAT scores. How many scores do you want to report? I put one. Would you like to report an SAT essay score? I put no because most schools, again, don't require the essay section of the SAT. So you don't have to share that section score if you don't want to. And then I also put that I'm sitting for a future exam, which would be, I chose March 2024. So that way the school will know, okay, well, she's going to take another test. We're probably going to get updated test scores. That's the reason for sharing that information with them. And then here I put, I chose an arbitrary testing date of November 4th. And then I put a score. Now, these colleges that I'm applying to will see these scores. Is that good or bad? Should you share your scores? It depends on the school. So when you look at a school's middle 50%, you want to be able to fall in the middle of that middle 50%. Um, Let me give you an example. Middle 50 SAT. So here's MIT. Here's their middle 50%. So middle 50 means that um, between the 25th and 75th percentiles, these students are scoring in these ranges. And there's a quarter of students scoring below this range and a quarter above it. And so the middle 50 is kind of where you'd want to fall if you're applying to a school that doesn't require testing, but you're sharing your test scores. So, for example, SAT in the math section, the middle 50 at MIT is 780 to 800. With my math score here of 600, I'm falling way below MIT's middle 50. I'm falling way below. And so this is a world where I would not recommend sharing my test score to MIT. This is not a good example because MIT requires test scores. So if I'm applying to MIT, I have to tell them what I'm getting, what I got. But it's just an example. Same thing for the critical reading or the evidence-based reading and writing. I wrote here that I got a 690. I'm falling below it. I probably shouldn't share these scores with a school where the middle 50 is so much higher. You don't want the test score to be used against you. So that's sort of our benchmark for whether you should share test scores or not. But if I had gotten an 800 in everything, math and critical reading, I would definitely share my scores with these schools. So if you're wondering whether you should share those scores, that's the kind of the rule of thumb. And this is how you would report that information again if you were sharing your test scores. So that's testing. Activities is probably, I think, the most time consuming part of applying because this is where you write everything you've been involved in while you were in high school and beyond. So again, here's where we're kind of adapting the application to fit our needs as non-traditional students. You're welcome to include everything that you were a part of in high school. So any leadership, any sports, academic organizations, awards, you can definitely do that. You should also include, as non-traditional students, any jobs that you've had, any military experience that you've had, any trainings or deployments. Those are all things that you can put here on the application activities list. It's not designed for that. It's designed for like the high school student who does like National Honor Society and, helps take care of grandma. But for our purposes, what the college is wondering is how do you spend your time? What are you up to on a day-to-day basis? And this is where, again, having information about your job or family life, if you have, children, um, if you, again, your military experience, you can put all of that information here. And if you have stuff that you want to share from high school, you're welcome to do that as well. So here I put, some made up experience in an art club where I was president. And I do want to show you an example of a good description. So every activity will ask you for a description. So what did you do and what did you accomplish? it's helpful, just kind of like a resume, for you to list that information in a quantifiable way. So, for example, I wrote here that I led meetings of 20 students, and I we raised $200 towards art supplies. Now, that helps them understand what kind of scale are we talking? Are we talking about, is this a club of two people, or is it a club of larger? What are the things that they're doing? And again, the more quantifiable you can be, the more helpful it is. So when you're putting together your descriptions for your activities, try to think about it like a resume. Try to think about it in a way that, how can you share what you've been, what you're a part of, and the scope of it. If you are listing things that happened after high school, you can hit post grad, and then your school year, your school break, and then how long you spent doing it. You don't have to be exact here. This is not asking you, for exact numbers, but be reasonable, right? If you can't do something for, 15 hours a day for 57 weeks a year, because that's not possible. And then this is just to help the college understand, what are you going to pursue when you get to their campus. So this, again, a very uh, basic activity. There is space for 10 of them. You don't have to fill all 10 spots. We recommend that you don't fill all 10 spots unless you really feel like you have a lot to share. But this is not something you have to fill just for the sake of filling it. And in terms of like the order of it, I find putting the things that are more relevant or recent up at the top. So I've spoken with some community college students, veterans who are a part of like robotics. That's something I would put fairly high, because they're a part of robotics at their community college. It's relevant to their intended area of study. So that at a quick glance, an admissions officer will get a sense of, okay, this is what this person wants to do when they come. Um, and it kind of supports their academic interests. So think of it like that. If you have some experiences that relate to your area of study, you can put that a little bit further up. Jobs, I'd put a little bit further up. Things that happened a little bit a longer time ago, you can put further down. Um, when you when you put all the activities in, you can arrange the order. So you don't have to do that up front. That's the activities list. And here is the essay. So not every college requires the Common App personal statement. You'll find the more selective schools do require it. And if you've written it, we encourage you to submit it to schools. So some schools will give you the option of submitting it. So you can see here that the two schools I have on my list under my colleges are BC, Yale, and USF, University of South Florida. So here I've chosen my prompt, and then I just, for the purposes of this demonstration, I put the Gettysburg Address. But so you can see what it looks like when you complete that requirement. And then here there are two questions that are optional. The first is about how COVID-19 and natural disasters have affected maybe your high school career, your work opportunities, maybe your reason for joining the military. It sort of depends, but it's a broad question, kind of meant to capture any changes that have happened as a result of COVID. So for families that maybe are victims of hurricanes or wildfires, other natural disasters that affected their ability to use the internet, to go to school, that's where that's what this question is kind of getting at. And then the COVID-19, again, if you felt that COVID affected your academic work in high school, or, it's a little bit of a less relevant question these days, because it seems like we've moved on from that. So this question was really important in 2020 when students were applying and all of a sudden they, couldn't go to school and things like that, but it's a little bit less relevant now. You're welcome to share anything if there is anything you want to say about that. Same is true here. So is there additional information that you want to share about your application? And you can put here if you had a particularly weak high school experience. I wouldn't belabor this question. 2 or 3 sentences about whatever you want to say is I wasn't a good high school student because I did not apply myself. I, joined the military and now I feel like I'm ready to, um, tackle challenges differently. Just a couple of questions of short sentences to let them know where you are in your academic journey if you want to share that information. But if you feel like you don't have to share anything, you don't have to answer either of these questions. It does not help you, it does not hurt you. It's really just meant to give some information and context to the schools. Okay. And then finally, this section is kind of annoying. It is some schools will ask you to complete what's called courses and grades, where essentially you're going to go through your high school transcript and put it into this into the Common App. So you're literally going to go, I took English 9 in grade 9 and I earned an A- in the first semester. It's really tedious. And they do this because the Common App will then upload all that information directly to the college, and the college can then manipulate your GPA and run their formula and things like that. So it's quicker for the school, but not every school requires it. And so you can see here that the 3 schools I had on my list don't require it. But if you're applying to any of these, it will require it. So you will have to fill it out. It's nothing major. It is simply data entry that makes it a little bit easier for those colleges to work with your grades. So that's called courses and grades. But beyond that, now the Common App is complete, you can see that that's the case. And then after you've completed the Common App, then you'll work on your supplemental applications. Now, every college that you're applying to will have a supplemental application. So this is it for BC. It will have some like general information about deadlines, which is really important. And then it will tell you what's required. So a council recommendation is required. 2 teacher evaluations, letters of recommendation are required. The Common App personal essay is required. And then these are the college questions, the supplemental essay. And it tells you about the what that question is. So that's kind of the basic information. But then under the questions is when you're going to find, when do you want to start? You want to start in September 2004. You want to live on campus. It will ask you again, do you want to send in your official school report? You can hit no if you don't want to share that information. You want to apply to studio art. So these questions, as you can see, are a little bit more, they're tailored to BC, to their programs, to what they're looking for. So they're going to get the Common App and this supplemental application. Now, I filled out the University of South Florida's questions earlier. Uh, uh, I don't know why that's not working. Sorry, I'm stubborn. I have no idea why that's not working, but you're going to basically fill out these questions. Usually the last section of the supplemental essay is going to be, of the supplemental application is going to be the essay question. And this is where you're going to, kind of copy and paste and put that question or that response in there. Everything else, like family questions, they're usually legacy questions, right? Did you have anyone in your family attend BC? Anyone work for BC? Uh, this is all really, again, more, they're tailored towards the high school students. Do you want colleges to be able to contact you? You can select yes or no if you want to be able to be reached by those schools. And then they're trying to understand, how did you learn about BC? So that's where you'll find that kind of information. Academics is where you're going to input what school you want to apply to. So if you want to do like engineering, or what your major is, that's where you're going to choose this. Most schools will ask you at least once, like, what major you want to apply to. You're not married to that major. You don't have to study that, but they are going to read your application in the context of that. So, for example, if you selected mathematics, they're going to look at your transcript and expect to see a high level of math ability. They're going to, if you select philosophy, they're going to look on your activities list or your essay questions to understand what your interest in philosophy is, and how you sort of supported that interest. So these, you don't have to study these things, but just know that your application, once you select it and you submit it, it is being read in that context. And then if you like to be pre-med or pre-dental or anything like that, that's what that question is. So all of these schools essentially ask the same question. They kind of follow that same format of like, when do you want to apply? What do you want to study? How did you learn about our school? And then your any legacy information, and then finally your essay response. So that's the my colleges. And so what I was hoping to show you with USF was that once you've completed this section, right, the question section, so all of the BC specific stuff, and you've put in your essay, your BC essay and everything, um, you also have to release your FERPA authorization. FERPA is essentially your educational rights. You're essentially saying that you waive your rights to access that information, and that you're allowing colleges to get things like your transcripts. You have to release your authorization in order for schools to get your transcripts. So that's standard par for the course. And then this is where you invite your recommenders. It tells you what's required. And if you don't know, like, sometimes we have applicants who are like, I don't know like what the school report is or what the uh, council recommendation, like, I don't know what that is or where to send it. This is where you can come and download it and then send it to whoever needs to get it. Um, I've told many of you before too that most schools will require teacher letters of recommendation. They have to be academic in nature. Schools want to know who you are in a classroom. And then you can have an other recommender. So this can be leadership in your unit. It can be, an employer, but that does not take the place of the teacher letter. And you can see here that it is kind of clearly delineated. Once you've completed all of these, you can then review the Common App. I can't do that. Okay. So we can see that I completed everything for USF. It was, pretty straightforward. They do have a section here for people in the military, and so I completed it as though I were in the military. I released my FERPA authorization, and now I can review the Common App. So once I've done both the Common App and this USF application, it will ask me, do you want to include the essay? Because USF does not require the Common App essay. I'm gonna hit yes, because why not? Let them see another piece of writing from me. And then it will essentially ask you to review your application. So you can download it, you can pop this out. Let's see how I can easily see this. This is what it looks like to a college. So if when you've completed it, you're welcome to download this and save it, but you can see that this is what it looks like when they're reading applications. So they'll get everything kind of at a glance. And you should review this for any information that's incorrect or anything that you don't want them to see. You can see, the list of activities will kind of take up this page if you have more than one. And then here's your essay. You can make sure formatting looks good. And that's it. And then after the Common App, which is everything before this section, you'll have then the supplemental application. So this is what the USF questions look like. And that's it. That's what the application looks like. So I'm going to close this. Oops. And I'm going to share this again. And then once you do that, it will ask you to confirm that you looked at it and everything was good. And then you're going to pay your fee. Like I said, for most veterans, you should be able to find a fee waiver by reaching out to the college themselves. It's annoying that it's not easier than that, but you should certainly ask, because I think it will be uh, helpful. Um, Obviously, because these application fees they add up. So once you do all of this, then you're going to digitally sign and submit your application. And that's kind of it. The first year application is very straightforward. It just requires a little bit more thought, I think, than it would if you were just a high school student, but it's not difficult or anything. So some final points. Who do you go to for questions? The university admissions office. So even though the college, or even though the Common App is the one kind of administering the application, they're not really the ones kind of monitoring this information, or they're not, um, you know, doing anything with this data. So you should go directly to the university's admissions office for questions when you're completing it. The Common App is just the platform for this information. Anything that's being asked by the Common App is really being asked by the university itself. But obviously the exception would be if you had a mechanical problem or a technical issue, then you can reach out to Common App for those. Some tips, things just to keep in mind. It is possible to make changes on the Common App, but keep it to a minimum. And what I mean is you can make changes to the Common App and send it to one school. So you can submit it to USF, for example. And then maybe you want to change something and send it to another school. Um, you can do that, but it's easy to make mistakes when you keep changing the application, especially on the fly. So I recommend completing the application once and then making sure that you're happy with it and then just submitting it everywhere that you plan to apply. So don't, it's just so much more work when you have to change it, and it's easier to make mistakes. Um, don't wait until the last minute. The Common App almost always crashes or slows down the evening of December 31st or any other big deadline days. So if you're encountering that, it's okay. It's not ideal, but you can try again the next day. Uh, you will not be penalized for submitting your application a little bit late. It will still go through. Um, it's not great, but it won't automatically result in an automatic rejection or anything like that. But you can absolutely plan for it by submitting earlier than the deadline or the day before the deadline. And then finally, once you've submitted all your applications, you will probably get a confirmation email from the school itself, and then they'll refer you to an application portal, which is going to be hosted on their page, that will allow you to keep track of all this of the application and other items that are required to apply. So keep track of those logins because it can get kind of overwhelming. You know, you have your Common App login, you might have in another application login, like the UC application or an MIT application or something like that. Um, and then you'll have application portals for all of those schools. So it can get a little bit chaotic and confusing. So you want to make sure that you keep track of all your login information. Another thing to note about the Common App is that it does close. So if you're here but you're not planning to apply for 2024, you're welcome to complete the Common App as much as you can right now, and it will close at the end of July and then kind of reopen in August. So it kind of does a refresh every cycle year, and August 1st is the official open date of the Common App. So you're welcome to kind of mess around here right now if you're not applying for 2024. Just know that you can't submit any applications because it's not your cycle year. Okay, that was it. That's all I have for you. And I'm going to check to see if there are any questions because I'd be happy to answer any. Are you doing a walkthrough for the transfer application as well? I'm happy to do one if the interest is there. The transfer application is a little bit, I find the common application for first year students to be very straightforward once you understand it. The transfer application can be a little bit more confusing, so I'm happy to do it if you all feel like there is a need for it. Are there any other questions, thoughts, concerns, anything that I can address for you? If you do have questions, you're welcome to email me directly. Thank you. You're welcome to email me directly, and I'm happy to go through any other parts of the common application. Uh, Most applications for first year students are due at the end of December or early January, so there's still some time. I hope that this was helpful. And if it was, I hope that you will consider coming to our other webinars and programming because that's the reason that we keep doing this. We hope that it will resonate with you all at this particular time in your application journey. So thanks again for coming. If you want to reach out to me, Annie at serviceschool.org, that's where you can find me. I'm happy to help. Thanks, everyone, and good night.